Sorry. Good. We'll call to order the council meeting for May 6, 2025. And we'll start with our opening ceremony. If you get to the sheet,
Thank you for coming, everybody. It's always great to have community engagement. I'm just going to read what I prepared. So, my name is Hilary Shugart, and I'm the president of the Ridgewood Audubon Society. I would like to thank Mayor Bain for this opportunity to host the opening ceremony of the Logan City Council meeting. I feel very lucky to live in such a beautiful valley and well-managed city. And I would like to highlight spectacular bird-friendly successes of the City of Logan and the Ridgewood Audubon Society, and especially the ways in which we have collaborated to make Logan and Cache Valley a nice place to live. In so doing, I hope that I can impart the joy, optimism, and resolve I feel to keep the city on a good path as a bird-friendly city. The Ridgewood Audubon Society is a 501c3 nonprofit conservation organization and a certified chapter of the National Audubon Society, which is one of the oldest and largest conservation organizations in the country. We manage the 146-acre Amalgamated Shorebird Sanctuary, which is part of the Cutler Reservoir and Marsh important bird area of global importance. Cache Valley hosts 323 species of birds, and the Ridgewood Audubon Society has been running the annual Christmas bird count since 1955. That's 70 years of valuable community science data produced by scientists around the world. Our crowning glory for nature education is that in 1997, in collaboration with the First Presbyterian Church, we established the Stokes Nature Center as an independent nonprofit nature education organization. Now for a few highlights of how the city gets it right, and then examples of how we are better together. Logan City has maintained the prestigious designation as a Tree City USA for 4 years. And we've just celebrated the Logan City proclamation for Arbor and Bird Day with a tree planting party in Merlin Olsen Central Park. Another great sign is that Logan City has an ordinance to address light pollution and light trespass, which are contributing factors to sky glow, a disorientating and deadly problem for migratory birds. Together, better together. In 1990, when Denzel Stewart Nature Park was at the very real risk of being repossessed, Ridgewood Audubon Society members stepped up and made the nature park a reality with trails, interpretive signage, and gathering spaces. And now we're about to celebrate 50 years of the Nature Park Heat with the Stewart family. In 2006, Ridgewood Audubon Sue Robertson worked with the City of Logan and a $30,000 RACS grant to establish Sue's Pond as a rest stop for migratory birds in the Logan City Wetlands Park on 1900 West. Logan Library now has 5 popular circulating bird-watching backpacks with high-quality binoculars, bird guides, and a set of discs for birding while playing disc golf. Last but not least, we were the catalyst and a major contributor for the Merlin Olsen Central Park Little Logan River Wildlife Mural, which puts us on the map for the Utah Wildlife Federation Wildlife Walls. And speaking of maps, we also ensured that the Cache Valley Chamber of Commerce Visitors Bureau map highlights the top 10 birding hotspots in Logan and Cache County, which includes First Dam, Stewart Nature Park, and Sue's Pond. Let's keep up the good work. And now, Mike is going to lead the pledge.
I'll you guys a question. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Hillary. I was out this morning and we be part watching the pumpkins. And it was a beautiful spring morning. Take pictures of pumpkins. It's great. So,
The park under construction.
yes, but it's
The
good.
rest of it.
And that's what it was on.
Yeah, the rest is land construction.
Yeah. Yep. It sounds wonderful. So, our next item on the agenda is acceptance of the minutes and approval of the agenda. We do have a request from staff to remove agenda items E and F, ordinance 25-06 and resolution 25-16. Remove those from the agenda. And continue them, give it a few months to refine a few items.
Again, we just appreciate the input we've had from various organizations and realize there probably are some fairly major changes we need to make. So the question was, do we hold a public hearing tonight, or do we wait until we have a more accurate document to address? So that's the consideration is before council.
And I think we'll adjust it to the minutes too before there's a motion. I was reviewing them this afternoon. Let me pull up my note here really quick. There was just one number that was wrong on, I think it was line 180 on the minutes during my board reports from 2 weeks ago. It was mentioned that it was a 100 megawatt solar installation that is being discussed out in the county. That's 150 megawatts is what it was. But other than that, I didn't notice anything.
And then I had 2 changes, which I sent to council and Esley, since she was the one that did the minutes on line 193 and line 206. Just a couple of minor modifications there. And I sent one to Teresa on line 50, so.
Okay. Any other adjustments to the minutes or do you have a motion?
I'll move acceptance of the minutes as amended and tonight's agenda.
As amended?
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor? Aye. Jeannie? Probably should have roll called, huh? We do have Jeannie attending virtually. I forgot to mention that. Can you hear us, Jeannie?
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Barely.
My question is, are we approving the agenda as amended, or do we have to, all it said was approval of the agenda? And I didn't know whether we had to vote on removing items from the public comment period.
So it was, the motion was made to approve it as amended, so removing those 2 items.
Correct.
Okay.
If we're approving it as amended and the minutes, I say aye.
Okay, perfect. I think that's an aye from everyone. Sorry, Jeannie, I need to remember that you are there in the sky. Our next item is just a
So
reminder.
maybe, so if people did come for the public hearing, thank them, I want to thank them for their interest and say, we're continuing to work on this.
Yeah. Sorry, this is my first time being acting chair of a city council meeting, so bear with me a little bit.
You're doing good.
But yes, we will have a public hearing for those items. Did anyone attend to speak specifically on those 2 agenda items? Yes. Yeah, I think we're just going to continue. I know staff had a lot of changes that they wanted to make to that code. And so I think they're looking at 60 plus days to kind of make those changes, talk to the county. I know specifically had a lot of issues with it, and then bring that back. Yes.
I'm sorry,
No,
first
okay.
time here. So we're taking it off and come back in 60 days if we want to talk about it?
Yes, yeah, we'll renotice for those items, yes. But I don't know if we have an exact deadline of when those changes will be made. But
Perfect.
we will
I
renotice
appreciate it. Thank you
and
so
we will hold a
much.
public hearing at that point.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's going to come back as a workshop item again.
Yes.
And then it'll be announced
Okay.
for public hearing.
So we'll have it on the
meeting
agenda.
will be a workshop where you won't have the opportunity to be heard, but the next one will.
And again, we've received quite a bit of input via email, which you're welcome to continue to send email comments to council and staff as we sort of work through and come up with something that we hope works a little better for folks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, moving to our next item, our regular 2025 meeting schedule, our first and third Tuesdays at 5:30. Our next meeting is May 20th at 5:30 p.m. here at City Hall. Now it's time for questions and comments to the council and mayor. So we'll open the mic up for 3 minutes. You're welcome to come up and state your name and place of residence, and keep your comments to roughly 3 minutes, and or exactly 3 minutes, and items not on the agenda and within the purview of the city council. Thank you, Vanessa. The time is open.
Hi, I'm Simon Doan. I'm from North Logan. I'm with the American Communist Party. I just wanted to raise attention to the canal trail that was blocked off by a private landowner over by Herms Inn. I used to walk to Herms Inn like 2 miles from campus to get to my job. And there's probably like, there might still be people who like need access to that trail. So I was wondering if there's ever going to be like a resolution on like buying an easement or anything like that. But yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for your comments. And maybe we can have Craig, would you be interested in sending him an email? Give him a little bit of information on that later? Sure. Perfect. Thank you.
As long as you sign in with your email on the sheet. Yeah.
Where is that?
We'll have Craig reach out to
Just
you.
right outside the door.
Thank you, Craig.
Mr. Riley Potawasi. I'm a resident here in Logan. I'm here speaking on behalf of my eldest sibling. Hello, this is Matthew Potawasi using my brother Riley as my stand-in. I'm not here right now since I have a job after a year plus of unemployment. We'll get to that in a moment, but I want to explicitly note something. Me not being here isn't because I don't want to be, it's because I am compelled by our laws to choose between civil participation or monetary prostitution. But I'm privileged enough to have my cake and eat it too. I have a sibling as eager to draw our society's contradictions to light as I am. So next time you bemoan the lack of civil attention your constituents give your efforts, looking at you, Mark Anderson, and you too, Jeannie Simmons, are guilty of this. The next time you bemoan the lack of public participation, remember we are struggling to get by. Not because of some moral failing, not because of a lack of nuance in the definition of public events. We are struggling because our elected leaders turn their eyes from the real problems. The real problem. I'm now a janitor for the city of Logan, Utah, but instead of getting paid $14 an hour working directly for the city as a public servant, I'm working for a third-party contractor and getting paid $15 an hour, and that's with the promised increase after a probationary period. You may not remember, but my call for a pay raise, not for myself, but for the entire part-time janitorial team, was seen as inappropriate. Meanwhile, we will have another meeting on May 13th discussing another pay raise for elected and executive municipal officers. Crickets on part-time starting pay raises, busybody administratively supported pay raises for those with a tendency to drag their feet. And yet you bemoan our citizens and their priorities. You don't have any of them. You rush an expansion on the municipal code, one devoid of feasibility study that will inhibit freedom of speech, not only through paywalling participation further, but by including, and I quote, changes to the administrative procedures, definitions, application process, review and denial criteria, and yes, fees. Hopefully we'll get adequate discourse on this amendment, but outside the vacuum of that ordinance, it becomes hot on the heels of more civil unrest. Bear River Health will be getting a new revenue stream, and still your sloth will show. Sloth in addressing the feasibility study done by the Housing Crisis Committee you formed years ago. Sloth in addressing the energy concerns we now apparently have disagreement on. Sloth in doing anything in your 4-year terms other than the sound of rubber stamps and circus shows. I urge anyone, from my brother here, to anyone sitting behind the camera, to anyone watching from home, to all the guys, gals, and other pals who live here in Logan, Utah, to run for the upcoming mayor's seat and 2 city council positions. You can throw your hat in the ring between Monday, June 2nd and Friday, June 6th. Be sure to take any time off you need since the Logan City Recorder, Teresa Harris, will only be available from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on those days. I look forward to seeing your name on the ballot. I look forward to seeing the profile voicing your concerns that is legally obligated to be posted. Have a good day out there. Take care, stay safe, good luck, and have fun.
Thank you.
Thanks, Riley.
Good job, Riley. Sounds like right on time.
Patrick Belmont from Logan. Today I've got some thoughts to share regarding the idea that you've locked us into 30 years of fossil fuel power to protect ratepayers or because we're going to need it for growth. A really sobering statement was just released by a board member from Allianz Insurance, one of the largest insurance companies in the world. These are people whose entire job is evaluating risk. And I'd encourage you to read it in full. I'm happy to send it to you, but here's the gist of it. He says, and I quote, "The insurance industry has historically managed climate risks, but we are fast approaching temperature levels where insurers will no longer be able to offer coverage for many of these risks. The math breaks down. This is already happening. Entire regions are becoming uninsurable. This is not a one-off market adjustment. This is a systemic risk that threatens the very foundation of the financial sector. If insurance is no longer available, other financial services become unavailable too. No bank will issue loans for uninsurable property. Credit markets freeze. This applies not only to housing, but to infrastructure, transportation, agriculture, and industry. This is what climate-driven market failure looks like. Some argue that the state will step in where insurers withdraw. But this assumes that the state, i.e. the taxpayer, can afford to do so. This assumption is already breaking. If we get to 3 degrees warming, he says, risk cannot be transferred because the assets are uninsurable. Risk cannot be absorbed because there is not taxpayer capacity to do so. Risk cannot be adapted to because we will have exceeded physical limits. The financial sector, as we know it, ceases to function, and with it, capitalism, as we know it, ceases to be viable. End quote. This is coming from the insurance industry. More daunting than his statement is the fact that in nearly every case that we have missed the mark in predicting climate risks, it's because we have underestimated them. In nearly every case, we've underestimated them, often considerably because the system interdependencies are so difficult to predict. On a related note, one factor in your vote to lock us into 30 more years of fossil fuels was based on Mark Montgomery's assertion that he had been actively working to procure geothermal energy and they just stopped responding to him. So in the spirit of honest inquiry, I submitted a grammar request to see what contact Logan Light and Power has had with Fervo Energy, which is developing the world's largest next-gen geothermal plant right here in Utah. It will be online by 2026. Mark has not been in touch with them, at least in writing, in nearly 4 years. And even then, he was just being copied on emails. So I leave you just with one question.
It's your time, Patrick.
As the consequences of these contracts become more visible, how will you explain the choices you made to the next generation and the most vulnerable of Logan residents?
Thanks for your comments.
Can you send us that study? Would you send
I will.
Thank you.
Gail Hanson, Logan, and I was going to not say anything today. But once again, the action that you took was a violent action. You have initiated, you know that trolley thing where there's people on the track and you get to choose? We're all on the track. But the people that are most directly on the track are the people close to the oceans, are the people where it's already hot. And you have said, well, let's see if we can save our citizens and residents a little bit of money. And we don't care if you lose your livelihood, and we don't care if you lose your way of life, and we don't care if you lose your life, because we need to save a little money. Those areas, according to Patrick's statement, are uninsurable. Do you know what that means? That means that the insurance companies won't take the bet because they know they'd lose. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Seeing no one else, we'll move on to our next agenda item, our mayor and staff reports. Mayor Davis.
All right. Tonight, I am presenting to you the fiscal year 2026 mayor proposed budget, and I thank the citizens of Logan, the city council, and the departments of the city for their cooperation in establishing this balanced budget. And while we do not have all the resources we wished we had, we are committed to doing our best with the resources that we do have. In the general fund, which is shared by many departments, including police, fire, public works, and parks and recreation, as well as other governmental services we provide, we continue with a collaborative approach to the target-based budgeting principles we have used for many years. The goal again is to give departments flexibility to address what they see as their most critical budgetary needs while achieving the strategic objectives set by council and the mayor. We are projecting fiscal year 2026 sales tax to remain relatively flat. Sales tax is the most significant source of revenue to the general fund and can vary significantly with the flow of the overall economy. We will continue to monitor the current economic uncertainty and are hopeful that local and statewide sales will stabilize and begin again to grow sustainably. Property tax revenues to the city do not necessarily rise as property values rise. While it is true that a specific property tax valuation performed by Cache County may influence the specific amount a certain taxpayer might pay in property tax from one year to the next, the total amount of property tax revenue that comes to the city from all existing taxpayers remains the same. This process is mandated by the state legislature. In other words, unless the city raises the property tax levy through truth in taxation, property tax revenue from all existing taxpayers remains flat. We believe it is better policy to raise the property tax levy through small incremental increases than through large property tax rate corrections done periodically. To that end, we are proposing to raise the general fund and library property tax levies by approximately 3%. Parks and Recreation is proposing to add a position to the Parks area budget. This position, while new to the general fund, was previously in the Recreation Center Maintenance Fund budget. With the dissolution of the Recreation Center Maintenance Fund, this position is proposed to be moved to the general fund. We are proposing to add 2 new firefighter EMT advanced positions to the Emergency Medical Services Fund. As calls for service increase, we must continue to hire additional EMT staff as revenues permit. Our employees are a critical asset for the city, and we must reward and retain them. Although amounts may vary, we have budgeted an average of 4% pay for performance increase. The increase in our insurance premiums for this coming fiscal year is 9.9%, which is a welcome change compared to 29%, 15%, and 7% in the previous 3 fiscal years. Healthcare premiums for employees are paid entirely by the city, so this is a significant benefit for our employees. This approach is particularly beneficial to those employees on the lower end of the pay scale. We believe our employees value and appreciate our approach to funding employee health care, and we sincerely value and appreciate our employees. In summary, my #1 goal as mayor is wise fiscal management. We are accomplishing a wide variety of capital projects and investment in infrastructure, but we do so in a fiscally responsible way. As mayor, along with my outstanding team, we pledge to do our very best to provide excellent services and quality of life for our citizens as we use our resources wisely and meet the challenges ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll next move on to board and committee reports, board and committee appointments,
Great.
also with Mayor Davis.
Excellent, and you've heard us talk about our kind of revitalization of our forestry board, and we're reorganizing that. We've reached out, we had a number of great candidates that were interested and applied, and so we, again, more than we could accommodate, but the nominees that we are asking council to ratify are from Adams, Thomas Schmidt, Bridger, Kyle Hollenbach, Ellis, Ben Ash, Hillcrest, Mary Sharp, Wilson, Sarah Gerking, Woodruff, Marie Rugg. So that's forestry, and then we also have a vacancy on our Historic Preservation Committee because Jennifer Duncan moved to our Planning Commission, so we would like to ask for approval for Darcy Pumphrey, who has some great experience to join the Historic Preservation Committee. So.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any comments or a motion?
I will move to ratify our new board members as presented.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. We'll do a roll call vote so we can hear Jeannie. Jeannie, do you want to go first?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Ernesto?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Mike? Aye.
Do we have any of those board members that are here in attendance that, if so, we have them stand up and recognize them. Okay, there weren't any I recognized, but I don't know everyone in person just yet, so thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to Planning Commission update. Jeannie?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Planning Commission had 2 items on the agenda the past meeting. One was called the JMW short-term rental at 616 East, 100 North. It is a 5-bedroom, half of a duplex that is now a short-term rental. The other rather exciting news was Gibbons Park Estates, which is an area that is just south of Gibbons Park that will become 10 single-family lots in the NR4 zone. And that's what they did.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeannie.
Tell her to keep going.
I know. We'll move on to board and committee reports. Jeannie, do you want to go first on your committee and board reports as well?
I can do that. In the past month, I have been a part of the group that interviewed the new Planning Commission candidate and the Historic Preservation candidate. I attended 2 Airport Authority Board meetings and 2 Historic Preservation meetings. Most of us attended the general plan meeting. I went out to the airport on Saturday when they presented the preliminary board for the airport master plan that will be coming up for a vote of the Airport Authority Board in a short while. I also went to Planning Commission, attended Audit Committee, and a part of Cache Metropolitan Planning Organization meeting.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeannie. And then we'll have Councilmember Mark Anderson give his board and committee reports too.
Economic Development met, and we discussed all the projects that have been going on for the last year and kind of reviewed some of the great improvements that have happened, and then some money has come back into our RDAs, which is really nice. So we have some funds to work with again. Those would kind of be the highlights. Historic Preservation Committee met. I was not able to make it, but there was just one facade update that looked really, really promising. So I thought that was nice for downtown. Solid Waste Advisory Board probably should meet. We should maybe talk about that, Mayor. It's been since May, I think, of last year that we met. So, but with Isa leaving, we probably haven't discussed that. So we should probably look at that. Golf Board met. They are very busy. The weather's been great for them, so they had a really busy April. They've got some really good projects going on that, and some new nets for, let's see, that would be for hole number 2. Yeah, that'll be hole number 2. And some other improvements that they're working on. So, and we all met for CDBG, but that was first part of last month. So I think that's about it.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Our next announcement is just that we have council budget workshops May 13th and May 27th at 5:30 p.m. here in the council chambers. So those will be starting next week, which will be exciting. Budget workshops are always fun.
Is it published somewhere what departments are presenting?
It is on the agenda. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's on the agenda online as well. So we'll now move on to our action items. Craig, with this first one, this has already been continued. We don't need to do anything with item 8A. Is that correct?
It's been asked to be continued. I don't know if the motion was made to continue.
So the request is to continue it.
The request is to continue.
Yeah, we're just waiting on numbers. And hopefully we'll have more next meeting.
Okay.
I'll move continuation of resolution 25-17 to May 20th.
Second.
I'll second that.
Jeannie can have it. That's okay. She probably said it before I did.
We'll do a roll call vote. Amy?
Aye.
Ernesto?
Aye.
Mark? Aye. Jeannie?
Aye.
And Mike? Aye. Before we move on, just a note for those that came in late, we did continue items 8E and 8F. Those are ordinances 25-06 and resolution 25-16 to a future date. We just removed them from the agenda, not continue. That's the technical thing there. removed from the agenda.
Do we need to vote on that?
We voted on that when we did it, when we approved the agenda.
Do we need to select a date, future date?
No.
We just removed it from the
We just
agenda.
removed and we'll just restart the process.
Yeah. So if you came in late and you were coming for those.
Those are the special event.
Yes,
Right.
the special event one's correct. And then we'll move on to action item 8B, ordinance 25-03. Mike?
Yeah, I'll just give you just a brief update. Is it one word, Jeff? Okay, ordinance 2503, this is a municipal boundary adjustment between Logan and Millville. It's down where the Zollinger's cold storage area is on the south side, or 7 feet south, east of the highway. And it really just involves moving a boundary between Millville and Logan to coincide with property lines. Pretty straightforward, copy the survey, we've workshopped this. To public notification, Millville's gone through their process, so we are. Questions?
That was quick.
That was quick. Any questions for the council?
Blinked, I would have missed it.
They've talked about this 9 times.
I have no more questions.
Jeannie, no questions?
No questions.
Perfect. We will open this up for a public hearing. If you would like to speak about ordinance 25-03, you're welcome to come to the microphone, state your name, and take 3 minutes. It's a very exciting one. With no one coming up, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the council for action.
I'll move approval of ordinance 25-03.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. We'll do a roll call vote. Jeannie?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Ernesto?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Mike? Aye. Ordinance 25-03 passes. We'll move on to ordinance 25-04. And Mike, you get to hear it again.
Just another similar one. It's 2504, just a boundary between us and Nibley, us being Logan City. This is down on the south end of Logan, down towards 3200 South, which is now 3000 South-ish where that new light is. This involves 3 properties. They want to go from Logan to Nibley. They want to develop these properties. It's for Canyon Landscaping. And they'll have access into Nibley services, whereas we don't have services down there. So we've talked about this area for a number of years. It makes sense to clean up the boundary to coincide with the highway. There's a plat. Any questions?
No, sir.
Good.
Covered it very well in the workshop, so.
We talked about it a lot. This is a public hearing. If you would like to speak on ordinance 25-04, you're welcome to come to the microphone and state your name and take 3 minutes. Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the council.
I'll move approval of ordinance 25-04.
I'll second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded. We'll do a roll call vote. Amy?
Aye.
Ernesto?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jeannie?
Aye.
And Mike? Aye. Ordinance 25-04 passes. We'll move on to item 8D. This is ordinance 25-07. And Amy, do you want to give us a quick little rundown?
Sure, would you like the pictures to go along with it?
I love pictures, so yes, please. Hopefully they're hand-drawn.
Yes, of course. Nothing but hands-on. All right. So this was an anticipated down zone, ordinance 2507. They upzoned it in order to subdivide the property. It was condominiumized. Then they, back in 1990, and they upzoned it in 2022 to subdivide the 5 fourplexes. And so it was anticipated as one of their conditions to downzone it again from MR20, which it was upzoned to, back down to MR12. Currently, they're all MR12 except for that one. And same with the flood. Any questions?
Nope.
It's a pretty easy one.
This is one we just need to fix.
We talked this through in 2022.
Yeah.
talked it through 2 weeks ago. So.
I thought it was a very valid reason for us to change it when we did it, so I'm happy to change it back.
This is a public hearing. If there's anyone here who'd like to speak on ordinance 25-07, you're welcome to come to the microphone and take 3 minutes. Everyone just smiles back at me from the audience or looks away quickly. We'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the council for action.
I'll move approval of ordinance 25-7.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. We'll do a roll call vote. Jeannie?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Ernesto?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
And Mike? Aye. Ordinance 25-07 passes. Items 8E and 8F were removed from our agenda and will be coming back at a future time. So we'll move on to item 8G. This is a budget adjustment, resolution 25-18. Take it away, Rich.
One single item to consider $7,704 as a reimbursement for some expenses from an accident. Asking to appropriate those to fix the ambulance.
It's a big one.
Has it been fixed already?
I believe so, yeah.
I doubt that those ambulances sit out of commission for very long.
No. What, 24 hours?
This is a public hearing for anyone who would like to speak on resolution 25-18. You're welcome to come to the microphone and take 3 minutes to speak about the resolution. Resolution. No one's looking at me now. We'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the council for action.
I move we approve resolution 25-18.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We will do a roll call vote. Amy?
Aye.
Ernesto?
Aye.
Sorry, Mark?
Aye.
Jeannie?
Aye.
And Mike? Aye. Resolution 25-18 passes. That closes our public hearings. We'll move to our workshop items. Our first workshop item is ordinance 25-08, and we'll let Russ give us the rundown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Pleasure to be here tonight. I have 2 projects. The first is a zone change request from Cache Valley Transit District. They prefer to be called, or they've changed their name to Connect. So now they're Connect. They moved to, in January, they moved to North Logan to a new modern facility that will help with their fleet and their functionality. And so the question they have is what should we do with this property as they've now moved out? It's about 5 acres, just under 5 acres. There's 3 structures. There's a smaller office building on the north side of the property. There's a large covered bus canopy. And then they have a larger shop building that's on the east side of the property. It's currently zoned public, and they've reached out to some of the government agencies in the valley to see if there were interest in purchasing the property. In that case, it would make sense to keep it public, but the city and the county and these other jurisdictions did not have interest. So they feel like the best thing to do is to apply for a rezone to a commercial service so that it can be sold and marketed more effectively. So as we looked at some of our long-range plans, it continues to call it public. You know, when we did the FLUP, we didn't anticipate the move at that point. And as you look at the area, 600 North is kind of a dividing line for industrial zoning, which is the purple color to the north, and then CS zoning, which is the more salmon color to the south. We do have this area of commercial and mixed use kind of near the highway and 6th West intersections where the Homestead project's being developed. But to the east, you have an older self-storage unit property that's grandfathered in under that commercial zone. And then to the south, you have mobile home park. And then, of course, surrounding the property to the south and mainly to the west is the city's service center and public works facility. And then to the north, you have more private industrial. Schreiber's is just off the screen there, and there's some warehousing and manufacturing. So the project went through Planning Commission, did not receive public comment, and the Planning Commission recommended approval to the City Council, voting 6-0. And here's some photos of the site. Again, here's the office building. This was built in the 90s. There's the large canopy for the buses. And then the shop area is just behind there to the north. It's hard to see. So access is via 600 north and 800 west. They have 3 driveway accesses. Happy to answer any questions.
Could you go back to what the fluff is? Because the fluff recommended.
It's public.
But
Has
I mean,
IP behind it.
IP for that commercial zone. Is there a reason that was recommended to be IP in the fluff versus if it's currently zoned commercial that you know of?
It might closer align with the current use. There's IP farther to the west as well. And staff was wondering if IP would be the better designation. But as you look at the current zoning, it's mainly CS south of 600 north, and so staff felt comfortable. They're pretty similar as far as what's allowed, what's not allowed. Commercial service is a little bit geared towards more commercial type development. You know, it doesn't allow the heavy manufacturing and some of those things. But a lot of the uses in the CS zone and the IT zone are similar.
Okay.
The existing building itself doesn't really lead itself to industrial uses either, but there's plenty of
Doesn't lend
space.
itself to commercial service.
Well,
It's kind of an odd building to try to sell.
So I'm just like looking at it going, okay, do we
Could be close, like, bus
Yeah.
area.
number out of a hat and say what we're gonna do?
Yeah,
It's like,
I thought maybe
whoever takes it
mechanic-
next could do anything.
Yeah, I thought maybe a mechanic or something would fit in well, as that was kind of the
And that would go
similar
CS.
use. They were servicing the buses. But it could be a variety of things. Maybe it's some sort of contractor business where they have some office up front and then they have storage and shop area in the back.
If somebody came to us with a project and wanted it to be rezoned, I'd be open to looking at all of those. It could be commercial, it could be commercial services, it could be industrial.
Yeah. Yeah, you could argue that maybe they're getting the cart before the horse, but I don't think it's as marketable if it's zoned public, because that really limits a buyer to
And they're
some
not,
sort of public entity.
they're not using the facility at all now that they've moved to there anymore.
They've completely moved to Northwell.
And there was no public comment on it?
Workshop item.
Any other questions for Russ Holly? Jeannie? No comments or questions?
Question.
Okay. We'll move on to our next item, item 9B, resolution 25-19, and we will let Russ Holly take this one away as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is my fun project. So we as staff have worked on 4 of the 6 neighborhood plans now. And a neighborhood plan is a grassroots, very local effort where we try to identify some of the strengths, some of the challenges of each neighborhood, what the residents want, what they don't want. We go into it with no bias or no preconceived notion of what we think. And Wilson is a really cool neighborhood. I learned some things about it, and let's see, we have one of our council members resides in Wilson.
2.
2, sorry, yes.
Is Jeannie
And our mayor
Wilson?
is a resident of
Okay.
Logan. Jeannie is just outside of the boundary, so it's kind of the southeast side of town, but it goes all the way from the mouth of the canyon to Main Street. It has kind of 3 or 4 distinct sub areas, and I'll get into that in just a second. got some great amenities, parks and rec. This doubles as a soccer field and a large-scale stormwater retention. This is at Mount Logan Park, up off Gibbons Parkway.
Which I always thought was near the middle school until we had to take kids up there for athletic practice. It was like, it should be close to Mount Logan Middle School if it's not Logan Park.
Yep. This is probably our most iconic park, Merlin Olsen Central Park. And this is the Little Logan River that runs through there on the North Branch. It's got our most famous corner market, Island Market. People really love this, and survey results show that they love these kind of uses in neighborhoods. Of course, it's got Ferns Inn up near the mouth of the canyon. The First Dam Park is really popular for a number of different users. It's got some newer developments. So this is the L59 on First East, kind of on the fringe of downtown. This is a good example, in my opinion, of how to do some step-down development as it has single-family homes across the street. These types of units are pretty compatible. Stormwater facilities. We have the Crockett Well House. Great trails. This is the Canyon Road Trail. Very popular. It's got a ton of awesome history. This is our first mayor's home, Alvin Crockett. And Bruce Bugsby currently resides there, and that's him there standing in his really cool garden that he does every year. He's got a theme. If you don't know about it, go by in a couple of months. It's on Crockett Avenue, and it's always kind of decorated pretty cool. It's called the Island because the river naturally forked, and it formed the North Branch and the Main Branch, and the island was between. This is one of the older plats that we have of the area, and it was naturally more agrarian. Scandinavian settlers seemed to be attracted to this area, and they had a lot of farms. The upper photograph shows it in the early 1950s. The bottom left is pretty neat because that's the Sanborn map, which shows the original footprints on the block. And then you can see underneath the new building. So Wilson Elementary School, when it was built in 26, only cost $32,000.
We're doing something
That was a steal, right?
Well, what is it in today's dollars?
Yeah, I don't know, but
Probably
it was this pink footprint right here, so it was much smaller, and that portion actually has been demolished, and now the school is about 2/3 of the block. The Island Market used to be much smaller, and now it's grown, and it's actually built right on top of the North Branch. Wilson is approximately 15% of our population. They have 7,621 folks that live in the area. And after surveying and talking with people, it became clear that they really identify with kind of their sub-neighborhood. Very few actually use Wilson unless you're talking about the school. But they feel like, okay, I live in the Cliffside neighborhood, or I live in the Island, Canyon Road, Sumac. So those were kind of the sub areas that came out of this. It's interesting too because these neighborhoods are all based on school boundaries, elementary school boundaries, and those have evolved a little bit, and they're actually different now. Some of the Wilson folks go to Adams, or I think I've got that backwards.
No, Adams now goes to Wilson.
Yeah, that's right. And then with the dual immersion.
The Boulevard area.
Yeah. So they're based off older elementary school boundaries that aren't quite as relevant, I guess, today.
What's that far left one called?
Downtown. That's just kind of the downtown strip.
That what that says?
That's Main Street. Main Street from Center Street down to the river.
I was trying to read it top to bottom, and I was like, okay.
I'm wondering why the people up in Logan Canyon identify as Cliffside when no one lives up there.
That's a vacant parcel. We just assigned it orange. Could go either way. The neighborhood has a large range of structure age, and generally the farther east you go or the farther up the hill you go, the newer the neighborhoods. So the purples are your 1972 to 2000, and then your darker blues are 2000 to 2023. The yellows and the oranges are the older structures, and not surprising, they're down kind of near Merlin Olsen Park, some of the more core areas. And then that kind of sumac, Thrushwood area is that in between kind of mid-century, 1941, 1971. So zoning, is generally split between NR6 and NR4, the predominant zones. There's quite a bit of rec and public zoning in the neighborhood. There's some open space parcels that are owned by the city. There's also a series of areas that are owned by Utah State, or UDOT owns a large amount of land just south of 89. And then, of course, on Main Street, we've got the commercial and downtown, and so that's your pinks and your reds. And then these little blips of orange that's the Island Market, that's Herms. Otherwise, it's residential. Current land use doesn't exactly match zoning, especially as you go into those core areas, the island. There's quite a bit of grandfathering there. So it's a house that maybe was converted to a duplex or a triplex in the 50s, 60s, 70s when the city and the university were really encouraging more apartments for housing students. So we have a few grandfathering. This is not as prevalent as the Adams area. We don't have as many grandfathering structures here, but there are quite a few. Growth potential. So as we talk to folks in the series of meetings and surveys that we've done, a lot of people are trying to understand how we provide housing for our next generation. A lot of these blocks do have some vacant center of the block, and so that's what's highlighted there in yellow. Or you have a larger block that you split in two, like our city council members just recently did. And so that's a way to infill. It's not always ideal to have a house behind a house or have these little cul-de-sacs in there, but it's a lot more efficient from a utility and infrastructure standpoint. Rather than continuing to sprawl out in the valley, if we can kind of grow within, we can reduce some of that sprawl.
So I could put an ADU on both of those now.
You could. As long as they're both owner-occupied. Both owner-occupied, so. And speaking of owner-occupied, there's my segue. The gray is owner-occupied, the kind of orange is non-owner-occupied, and so Cliffside is predominant owner-occupied, Island is more non-owner-occupied.
Does the non-owner include short-term rentals, or is that just people that are long-term, or is there not a?
Yes, it would include short-term rental.
Are we just getting that data just from rental licensing? Is that?
It's actually the base GIS layer, so if you're the owner and you also live there, those addresses will match.
Gotcha.
So a short-term rental that actually is owner-occupied will show up as gray.
Okay.
If it's
something that's like owned by a family trust.
Yeah, or
then
if
it'll
it's
show up as a
owned by an
non-owner.
investor that lives in Salt Lake, it'll show up orange.
Yeah, that makes
It's
sense.
based on the owner's address.
That makes sense.
So my neighbor.
Sidewalk inventory, so the blue lines are complete sidewalks, the orange lines are missing gaps. Where you see two side-by-side orange lines, those are kind of a priority because there's no sidewalk on either side of the road. Where you see blue on one side and orange on the other, that at least has sidewalk on one side of the road. Okay, so we did a survey. We got about 230 folks to participate.
Out of 7,000?
Out of 7,000, which outreach is difficult for whatever reason. Folks are busy or whatever. We advertised this. We sent out flyers. Hillary, who is not here anymore, she had some of her neighborhood chair folks. They went and knocked doors. We did pretty extensive outreach, but we only had 230 people to actually take the online survey.
But Matt Vance, who's getting involved in the neighborhood council, I mean, he does surveys kind of as part of his business. And when he heard those numbers at the Wilson neighborhood meeting, he said, those are really good numbers for a survey to try and get responses back. So
yeah.
I should find that email and send it to you, because he was impressed with the numbers. He said, that's pretty high for survey responses. So
good.
For what it's
about that. And I'm trying to remember our general plan numbers right now. About 175 or something.
Yeah.
So just for context, our general plan has a survey right now, and we're about 175 participants. So let me just put a plug in for that. If you haven't taken the survey for the general plan, go ahead and do that.
The survey. It's your chance to participate.
But housing and transportation seem to be the top two issues here. Parks and trails and open space were also very important. But again, with housing, it was like, how do we improve affordability? And that's what they thought. They feel like we need to figure out affordability for first-time home buyers. That was one of the big ones. And then home ownership opportunities. We want folks to transition from a renter to a homeowner. Transportation. This one is really about balance and perspective. I think folks are supportive about balanced road projects that don't decrease safety or don't decrease the character of the neighborhood. There was a lot of folks that want to try to increase walking, biking, and transit. And then the bottom one is the parks and trails and open space. How often do you visit that? And 90% of the folks utilize and visit the trails and open space in the area. Most folks agree that ADUs are good. That was a 60% yes response. 72% feel that crime is not a problem in the neighborhood. 96% feel that rec centers are important. 80% have a strong sense of community, and I was pleased to see that number. Utility services, fire department services, police department service, and garbage recycling services are all between 85 and 98% favorable. So folks like that in general. Folks feel that distracted driving is a problem. They feel like traffic congestion is a problem. But a lot of folks are also willing to alleviate congestion by driving less. So I don't know if that means telecommuting, carpooling, or walking, biking, transit. They're willing now. I don't know if they're actually doing it, but they say in the survey that they would be willing to do it. They have a strong sense of community. 83% like the idea of corner markets and would love to see more. This was an interesting response. So the short-term rental question, 61% do not like the idea of short-term rentals in their neighborhood. And then managing canals isn't necessarily our jurisdiction, but we threw that question in there. And most folks do not want to see the canals height. So I've generated about 30 recommendations. And again, this plan is not an ordinance. This would be a resolution. And it's more of a guiding document, similar to like a general plan. If you're going to, review a new code amendment or a new rezone in the area, this is a nice reference to look at to make sure that you're kind of falling in line. But it's more of a vision based planning effort. So just to highlight a few, I don't want to take too much time. The future land use plan and the zoning don't coordinate as well as it could be, especially when it's like rec and public areas. There's some areas up on Cliffside that are clearly more rec oriented, and they should go from public to rec. Places like Herms Inn, it isn't shown on the future land use map, and I think those areas or that property, that business is gonna remain for a while. So there's a few things like that I think should be cleaned up in future zoning and fluff efforts.
Is that something you're gonna look at in the general plan?
Yes. So in this case, as we go through the general plan process and we go to update some of those fluff maps, we can apply this rather quickly for that. Again, folks really prefer the sub-neighborhood names, so maybe future planning efforts could recognize Cliffside and Island rather than Wilson. As Cliffside area continues to develop, there's some kind of large vacant areas that are zoned NR6. They're under a Waterson conservation right now, but if those areas develop, we need more street connectivity to Cliffside. And so that's one of the recommendations is some redundant street connections. And that's kind of in general, when we develop new areas, we want multiple kind of block connections, not just these long dead end cul-de-sacs. Infill should utilize vacant middle of the block areas or other kind of vacant neighborhood lands. Things like ADUs, occupancy, maybe buyer programs that help to increase buying power could be utilized to better increase affordable housing supplies Balanced transportation between street widening, be very careful where and how we widen streets. For instance, Center Street shown as a collector all the way up to Cliffside. If we did that, we would lose, aisle 2 and 3 in the island market. And so we got to be kind of sensitive on, is it worth taking down the island market? Increased trail networks, access to trails. So one of the big assets of living in this area is you don't necessarily have to drive to a trailhead. If you live close enough, you can go out your door, get on a sidewalk, and then access a trail. And so continuing that, I think, is wise. Let's see, downtown development. That was another thing that the survey revealed. A lot of folks like the idea of creating a dense downtown. They think that's a great spot for apartments rather than up in a neighborhood area. And so, again, that L59, I think, is a pretty good example of how to gentrify our downtown. So continue that along that Main Street corridor.
These are in no particular order in terms of the number of comments. They're just randomized.
Yep.
Okay, can we talk about number 9?
In order of importance.
Yes. So number 9, the thought there is it should be site specific. So if you have a home with 6 bedrooms, capping it at 3 isn't the most efficient way to handle occupancy.
If you have the parking capacity.
Right, I was going to say bedroom and parking. You're exactly right, Mayor. So some other university towns have adopted this kind of site-specific, but it's based on a structure type and a garage size or a parking capacity size. Also, you can limit impacts to the neighbors, right? But empty bedrooms doesn't help with our housing affordability issue. So that's what number 9 says.
Do you have a question or further thought on that?
I mean, it bubbles up every couple of years that we need to readdress. Are no more than 3. We did changes last year, I believe, in redefining a family, right? In terms of what that was, and just, anyway.
And we proposed a blanket for occupancy, but I don't think a blanket is the approach. I think it should be more site-specific or structure capacity specific, so.
I mean, this is interesting to get ideas from the community on what potential ordinance changes could be that impact the whole city. This was obviously not be allowed only in the Wilson neighborhood, correct? Or could you do occupancy that's geographically defined? Because I think we've talked about that before, that it's hard to say in this neighborhood it's okay, but you cross the street and it's not okay in yours.
Only if it's in different zoning districts.
But if it's NR4.
But if it's NR4, NR6, then yeah, it's citywide, so. Any other questions? I could really talk about this all night, but.
I mean, this isn't a question. You have a spelling error on line 20.
Oh, I better fix that. Thank you.
I don't like trial networks, but I do like trail networks. But, you know, just before we finalize it.
Spell check never gets that one.
It doesn't. Nope.
Trial or trail.
Try to stay away from those lawyers.
And just from a CDBG perspective, Wilson has very few areas that are eligible for that funding, correct? Just because of the socioeconomic, as you get further east.
Just all the north spots before you go up the hill.
Yeah.
All the island areas do.
So some of those sidewalk areas that were identified would not qualify for CDBG funding for sidewalk improvements.
Yeah, the bulk of the sidewalk need is down in the older part of the
island. Okay.
Yeah, so that would qualify as you get up the hill. And there's some nuances to that, but generally it's down on the lower portion older. So
he's going to have that program.
It's been chopping block.
Did I hear Jeannie trying to make a comment?
Community development grants.
Yeah.
The floor is yours, Jeannie.
I'm a little concerned by the fact that we have collector roads identified and we're not creating collector roads there. And so perhaps what we need to do is more closely align what Public Works is thinking and what the neighborhoods are thinking in terms of neighborhood compatibility with the road structure. So I don't like the fact that we talk about, well, this is a collector road, but if we really made it a collector road, we have to rip out this and rip out that. And I think we have to think about it differently and not call it a collector road anymore.
Well, I agree with you. Every road that's a collector road has to rip something. But I agree with you, Jeannie.
And I also agree with Amy that changing the number of people in a structure is a slippery slope for us.
Is it what?
Slippery slope.
It would have to be very carefully crafted.
But it is a way to address the housing crisis.
That's
so it's clear, and I know that's an issue that's come up in a lot of different studies in our community.
But it doesn't do anything for their other goals, which are home ownership and things like that. It doesn't do anything for that stuff. So if our goal is to put people somewhere, then that's one thought. But it depends on what, the whole tenet of the neighborhood plan is overall, how they want the neighborhood to look. So that's sort of one of those pieces that we're going to have to work on, in my opinion.
Thank you, Jeannie. Other questions or comments for?
So just, if you could just, if I spaced on hearing you say this at the beginning, I apologize, but just how many times this has gone through with the Wilson neighborhood, and that because I believe they had multiple meetings on this prior to it coming to planning commission, correct?
Yeah, we started this 2 years ago.
Okay.
And they've had 3 neighborhood meetings. Again, we did the survey, and I think there's just been some informal, Hillary has gone out and talked to folks several times, and there's been a lot of feedback. I've changed a lot of things based on these meetings, et cetera.
Okay. Thanks.
Anything else for Russ? Thank you, Russ. Thank you. We will move on to item 9C, Resolution 25-20.
Wait, one more quick, this is not related to Wilson, but what's the timing for next subsequent neighborhood plans? Like I know Ellis doesn't have one, Bridger doesn't have one. What are the thoughts?
Ellis is next,
but we're holding off till
we
general
have
plan?
kind of pushed pause until the general plan process is over, and then we'll go from there.
And then it'll be Ellis and Bridger?
Those are the two remaining.
Okay, thanks.
And by that time, you'll have to redo Adam.
Bridger
That is
first,
true.
That is true.
Okay, we will have a workshop on Resolution 25-20 with Fire Chief Nate Thompson, and I'm really excited that I'm in charge for this one.
Unpopular resolution.
We're making some changes here.
I know, this is.
No, I'm teasing.
Here we are in May, already talking about fireworks.
There's a little spot here that we need to move the lines.
I think everyone appreciates the significance of this resolution, and no one likes it.
I know.
But that's okay.
Bear of the bad news.
Yeah.
Well, let's go through it. So, would it be easiest, I could go ahead and pull up the, let me go ahead and pull up.
Let's pull up the map.
The map for everyone. Let me just minimize this one. Okay, so, I should be able to zoom in for you here. I can take you through the borders if you would like, line by line. Essentially, the proposal this year is exactly the same as last year. Yeah, you'll see like right here in particular, we did move the boundary back to 1600 East. I'm going to show you a different map as well, kind of to see the whole district that we're in charge of in protecting, to kind of see how nicely that lines up with the North Logan boundary. We do still, this is an unincorporated area here off of 10th West. Down there, that's still not our jurisdiction, but typically the Cache County maps, when they come up, they line up well.
Dang it, that was my out.
I know, Mike, I know you were hoping for that.
I was going to jump the fence and go shoot fireworks in the middle of the field.
Hey, I tried. The fire marshal, he runs a tight ship. So, really, no change in boundaries. A couple changes in maybe semantics or in terms of terminology. In years past, there might be a little bit of confusion this year. Typically, what's legal in Utah has been known as a Class C firework. That term has been changed to Division 1.4G, same thing as Class C. They've just changed, the legislature changed it this year, so.
That sounds a lot more complicated.
They were trying to get
Division 1.4C.
It's
so-
changed
1.4T.
Ah, geez, sorry. See, I already messed it up.
Makes it easier for us.
And I just wanted to review the dates really quickly. This will all be posted at the, flyers will be available at the sales locations. Fireworks will be able to be legally sold this year, June 24th through July 25th. The hours of discharge will be 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., July 2nd through July 5th. Hours are extended to midnight on the 4th. And then July 22nd through July 25th, with hours extended to midnight on July 24th. All firework restriction signs will be posted beginning on June 24th and removed by July 26th. We updated those signs last year to be useful for
English and Spanish.
Yeah, Spanish and English. So those have been updated for all of our areas, which is nice. So. And then there'll also be the flyers, like I said, indicating these restrictions. Additionally, we've added a QR code, so when people are at the point of sale, they can click on it with their QR to see if they live in an area that's closed or open. The reason
I'm assuming it'll just pull up the map.
What's that?
It'll just pull up the same map.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And then let me just show, one thing I wanted to show you just quickly was, so the significance, you'll see here, this is the boundary that Logan City Fire Department
obviously overseas with suppression duty. And so when you see the bigger picture, as you can see in North Logan, that boundary is 1,600. This makes that super efficient for patrols. Last year, we actually caught, several incidents actually, it worked out very well. The west side, as you know, basically because it boundaries agricultural areas, limited water supplies on the west side. Providence is probably the trickier zone, to be honest. You can see how that is kind of like a little modified donut in here, and the boundary is here. So this is a new map that we've given to our fire companies to be able to help manage, and I'll make sure law enforcement has those as well. So when you see the bigger picture for our district, I think it helps you kind of get a good sense of where we'll be at this year. We did have a meeting down in Salt Lake today with the Utah Fire Marshal. It's super hard to predict the weather, right? Like we've seen maybe some early signs of continued drought. Obviously, the south is much worse off than we are here in the north. And of course, it can change quickly. So I guess the one thing that can really override any of this is the state fire marshal saying, hey, look, we've gotten into extreme drought conditions, no fire. So that's always the little disclaimer. But here today,
they can make that call. Could we also make that call if we felt like fire conditions in Cache Valley were bad?
The state fire marshal.
Only the state fire marshal can make that call.
And we are always in contact with them.
Sure.
They're good at keeping us apprised of how things are. So typically in Cache Valley, we've been lucky. The early part of the season, it's still relatively green. Usually July 4th is the area that's like, we're doing well. But there's always that chance we don't this year, and we'll just keep you posted. So
are these hours and dates for discharge set by the state too, or is that set by city ordinance? Like the 11 a.m. to 11 p.m.
This is given to us by the Utah State Fire Marshal's Office.
Okay. But we have a similar city code.
Well, we can't supersede state code, so it should be consistent statewide.
Can we can't, I'm just asking, obviously we can't be more lax than the state, but can we be more restrictive than the state?
No.
Or no, we just have to match the state?
Align with the state, so.
Align with the state.
Really smart, have our own code then.
But any questions on any of the borders or clarification on the dates? And like I said, we'll get more information out, as we get closer.
Okay. Good work.
Thank you.
Maybe fireworks will be so expensive.
I mean, I always joke with you, Chief, about how I want fireworks in my neighborhood, but the truth is the opposite. I like my sleep. Anything else for Chief? Nope. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate your time.
The poor dogs, that's all I have to say.
Yep, poor dogs.
For me.
You're right.
I like to sleep. What's that?
Never mind.
Were you making a motion?
No, I was, no, go ahead.
We'll move on to our last item for tonight, 9D, Resolution 25-21 with Rich Anderson from Finance.
Two items to consider. The first is a reduction of the budget by $37,217. This is the fire contract with North Logan. This can be handled a little different way. Like there was miscommunication. They're going to cover some costs directly rather than giving the funds to us.
Okay.
And the last one is a $12,000 donation from a generous donor for library mural art.
So the really fun mural down at the north end of the library, kind of by the trees, we're contracting with that same artist to do, as you walk into the children's area of the library, there's some big, just open space, just white walls up over the bookshelves. And so she will be doing some panels to be installed there, kind of to tie in with the other art, so.
Pretty cool. Any questions or comments for Rich? That's the end of our workshop items. Do we have any other considerations this evening?
The Bear River Association of Governments is in the process right now doing their community needs assessment. So they are one more survey that people could complete. So if you connect with them, they've been doing public meetings. They held some here in Cache. They're holding some in Box Elder tomorrow and next week. But if you'd like to participate in that, you can go to their website and get the information, and just similar to like the Wilson, just identifying what people feel are the important needs. It asks questions about have you had trouble paying your utility bill, which for our area, like last time, I want to say 27% of people who responded to that said yes. They've had difficulty in the past year paying all or, paying their utility bill in full. It talks about accessing food banks. It talks about being able to pay their rent. It talks about, being evicted, in danger of being evicted. So it does look at some of those kind of poverty information as well. So encourage people to complete that so that they can coordinate that with the health department and Intermountain survey that are also going on at this time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Jeannie, anything?
Not from me, thank you.
Okay, I have one last thing. Next week's Bike Week. That's May 12th through 17th, put on by Cache County. And I'm not going to make you all say yes, but I'm going to encourage you all to try to bike at least once next week.
I get an e-bike, so.
Yeah, I just use my e-bike here. I cheat and use my e-bike. But I think we can learn a lot
This
about our
weekend.
city being out on our bikes.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we're in the 70s.
I know.
Good bike day.
Good
bike days.
Bike around town this weekend and next week. But I would encourage you, all of you listening, to get on your bikes next weekend. Enjoy a beautiful city.
Prize if we do.
I think they're still looking for volunteers to help staff some of the stations, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I believe they have them all, but you're welcome to come help out if you want to, but I think they have them those. But I do know the county is doing like a scavenger hunt with prizes if you want to go around and check with your
I
boxes
think
there.
if I can,
And the
If you find me on your bike next week, I'll buy you an ice cream.
The library is one of the sites.
You gotta find me on your bike, and I will close my eyes as I run you over.
What do I get if I ride a ticket?
That's it. Being Zoe.
thank you. Good job, Mike.